Hi. Right. I wanted to just complete some circles on the last conversations we've had. One was I said that I thought feminism was a created or agenda-driven movement because population control was a huge pet project as well as mind control, and so it was decided it would be favourable to deconstruct family, slow down reproduction for a start, and deconstruct family intimacy or the family structure. So I believe feminism was towards that. So was the contraception and flower power. It's documented that LSD was deliberately released and Laurel Canyon was engineered, and things that we thought were wonderful movements. You talked about that in one of your video interviews, about that you thought the whole thing in London, the London scene, was like spontaneous and organic, the sort of new age thing and vegetarian thing, and you were so disillusioned when you found out it was also engineered, So, and equally I believe although some people authentically and scientifically have chromosomes that, chromosome evidence and so on of sexuality, but I think a lot of it was manipulated to validate, and manipulating the homosexual agenda was, first of all, it helped with the population control because that, there'd be less reproduction. Secondly, it would normalise, because homosexual paedophilia and homosexual things seems to be very much part of the establishment and so on. So they want to normalise that so that they can just say, well, that's normal. And the next step along that trajectory is to say that paedophilia is normal. And they tried that with Pi and so on in the 80s, in Thatcher's time, that it would be okay to have child porn as long as no child was hurt in the making of these photographs, or, like Harriet Harman and Patricia Hewitt associated with an attempt to lower the age of consent.
When we talk about Thatcher's time, we're talking about a central figure around all these people are all gathered, all with their connection back to these big organisations. So Thatcher was just this front for this amazing network, this agenda, this coup that was being brought in. I mean,
Are you saying Mrs. Thatcher was chosen as a front?
Yes, she was the front foot, and she was surrounded by all these people. And if you look up any of these names, you will find the connections to these huge secret Bilderberg type organisations. I mean, one step, they're members themselves. I mean, we're not talking a few steps here. This is Thatcher's time. So when you say Pi and Thatcher's time, this is another agenda, because what we have now is blackmailable.
Let's just
many blackmailable figures.
Yeah. What I've done is skipped the 40s and 50s. So post World War II, they decide this experimentation and research has to continue. We're going to disperse the scientists, fund it, organise it, decide on our programmes, different programmes like super soldiers, spies, break down the family structure, anyway, so all of that. So I believe the German hospital was created as an outpost for that, and, the MK Ultra, there was CIA, and that was the American branch. English side of it was under the radar until people like you, it seems only recent that you've got James Casbolt, you've got Sarah Adams, you've got Nina Valentine, you've got Barry King. He was early.
It was 1992.
Yeah, he was early.
And a lot of that plot ended up in the X-Files in the early...
Yes, he was early. And the other thing...
Ben Emlyn Jones.
Yeah, and he's... Yeah, so... Right.
And nobody could believe it.
Yeah. So you have to wait for consciousness, because like I said, the two MK Ultra survivors from America that started disclosing to me I couldn't frame it, and I didn't realise because they were triggering. I was getting triggered, so I was like reject. My brain was going, no, can't be, reject, you know. So I went to. So German Greer went to Warwick University, and I went to Warwick University, and I had, and it was like, you know, the late 70s, and although I wasn't gay or bisexual, but it was very much of the time, very trendy to question one's sexuality. Oh, I'm bi and I'm gay and I'm this, you know, kind of like that whole thing. And my second year, I shared a cottage with two very radical, you know, feminist lesbians. And I moved in their circles. I went to like rallies and meetings and protests and all the rest of it. And you know, with an open mind. And I didn't do drugs. You know, I knew even back then that I had a very extreme reaction to drugging. So, well, I would start to hallucinate, and I would go into post-traumatic. I would go into post-traumatic stress.
I mean, wait, did you try coke, or I mean, do you want to stay?
Yeah, I tried. Yeah, I tried coke, I think twice, and I accidentally got hooked on speed at 16 because I was acting a lot and I was dancing a lot, and I wanted to be. I was a bit anorexic. I was doing ballet and I wanted to be skinny enough for that. So my mother, that was one of the times my mother was hospitalised in Roundway Hospital in Devizes for 11 weeks and given the electroshock treatment. And electroconvulsive therapy. She called it electric. That was when they said this is to wipe trauma memories, because you've got so many. It's a groundbreaking new treatment where we can get you to identify the era in which you have a trauma, and then we can just
which has just been brought out recently in the media that they've said they can do that. But
no, well, this was back.
Your mum told your daddy you absolutely had to leave the RAF, then she was brought in for EC.
Yeah, but I found out more times of treatment before that, so I'll try not to get out of sequence. But just to conclude, not to throw out something controversial about homosexuality and then just forget to complete it. So while I was at Warwick...
There's just been a Freedom of Information document released that shows officially that Gloria Steinem was being paid by the CIA.
What about Germaine Greer?
Well, you can extrapolate.
Yeah, that it was connected.
I guess,
yeah, because a lot of people get used and they don't even know they're being used. They think they're genuinely passionate about a lobby.
They feel that their agenda's being... their good, well-meaning... path is being financed by the CIA. Hey, great, I get some money to do it. But
and we talked about that with scientists that were used to split the atom or something, and they thought it was for good. Social engineering movements,
they're so close to our hearts because feminism is so close to equality, which is what everyone wanted and was passionate about.
Yeah.
That it was being veered, to
right. Information management again. You come up with a new idea or something positive comes up, and then they have to shear it off to one side. That's what the various prophets that we have in the so-called New Age movement. But the thing about homosexuality is crucial.
Right. So just from my own observations with an open... I thought, I'm not gay, but I don't, I don't have a gender or a judgment, so, but I'm a natural observer because I was trained to be. I believe I was trained to be a spy / journalist, information extrapolator, catalyst for sensitive information to just be drawn to me. I believe that was programmed into me. But so I just observed. I had these two roommates that were radical feminist, radical. They used to call radical feminist lesbians or whatever. Anyway, so we shared a house and I went along with them to stuff. Oh yeah, that's the point I was going to make. Because I didn't mess around with drugs, and I'd gone to university, mature student, most were 18, and I was 21 because I'd taken 3 years out. And I'd worked, first of all, in the West End for a Jewish tailor, and I only stayed there for 6 weeks. Then I ended up with BCCI. But in the 6 weeks I worked in Piccadilly Square...
BCCI is...
Bank of Credit and Commerce International.
Huge scandal.
Yeah, it was a drug laundering, CIA connected, Middle East connected. The guy, Aga Hassan Abadi was...
the BBC.
Yeah, Aga Hassan Abadi was the president. He's the one that's in the 1001 Club. Right. So, Mum plucks me away from... Again, I was on a trajectory to get engaged to Nick Topless and happy and, you know, whatever. No, you've got going to London to work. Here's a job. Go to the interview. Go up to London to the interview, get the job. And in that 6-week period working in Leicester Square, Piccadilly Circus, when The Man Who Fell to Earth just came out and David Bowie was sitting in Leicester Square on the grass after the cinema was there with the picture, and David Bowie was just sitting, it was like the premiere was the next day, and it had just gone up in lights, and he was, and as a journalist, which I'd already been, anyway, right. The point is, I got addicted to speed at 16, which was my mother's slimming pills. She'd gone into a psychiatric unit again. I took her slimming pills because somebody said they'll help. Well, I wanted to lose weight, but I didn't know they were speed.
No.
So I kept renewing her prescription for 4 months until the GP put 2 and 2 together. Like, why does she keep asking for her slimming pills to be refilled and she's in the psychiatric unit?
William Sargent was addicted to speed.
Yeah, and so then he just stopped it, and I was in 2 days withdrawal. I was shaking for 2 days coming off that. So that was a little flash, and then I'd had a blackout. At 14, I'd drunk half a bottle of Pernod with a load of people, but I had blacked out and I didn't remember from 4 o'clock when we were drinking it in the car park, and then I didn't wake up till the next day.
Yeah, but what about homosexuality?
No, because you just asked me about how did I know I was of extreme reactions to drugs, so I'll just complete that thought line. So, and then working 6 weeks in Piccadilly, I saw all these junkies like sitting in their own vomit or collapsed with a needle in their arm in the phone booth, or one trying to con me out of money and saying it was for one thing and it was for drugs. So I just thought, okay, drugs, no, just don't go there. I messed with cocaine twice and had a very extreme reaction. Taking speed and whiskey once, lost 3 days. I would lose time to extreme. I would lose 2 to 3 days.
I find when I was younger and so
magic mushrooms at university, that's what all I took at university.
That the tiniest little bit of spliff would keep me awake all night with insight.
Yeah, it is. The revelation stuff is exciting, but
the tiniest bit, I was oversensitive to it. Hugely oversensitive to it. Yeah,
definitely. And when I took magic mushrooms at Warwick University, I was seeing visions, and very much actually like the mind control. The one that Nina Valentine asked me to take down a video because she said it was so authentic that it would trigger and traumatise survivors. So I did take it down. You liked it, but Nina said this is dangerous.
Well ahead
Angie.
with her research now, isn't she?
So, but that was the visions I was having on magic mushrooms at Warwick University. But they knew me as one that didn't take LSD or acid, or they knew, right, exactly. She's a bit older than us, she's fairly sensible, so she doesn't take drugs. So
people thought I took drugs because I was so dissociative, but I wasn't touching them because they were so strong to me that I couldn't...
Yeah, no, we were already overset. And so I was like, you know the way you'd have a designated driver if you're all going to go out and get drunk, one person agrees to stay sober. Well, I was that for them taking drugs.
Yes.
So like they'd say, right, we're going to go and look at we're going to go around Warwick Castle and we're all going to pop a tab before we go.
Yeah.
Will you make sure we don't jump off any parapets or anything like that? And so I just used to think it was amusing.
Yeah, it's an interesting life.
But in spending that intensive year with the gay community, you know, lesbians mostly, but also some
people call themselves separatists, didn't they? Some people call themselves separatists in that they tried to develop without the male presence there because it diverted them too much. Separatist is another.
Well, it certainly would stop reproduction, because at that stage there wasn't the option to adopt or surrogacy and all that.
It did stop
It's very crucial that, according to some other observers, that the reason why people become homosexual is because of they're manipulating the pituitary gland, or is it pineal gland? I get the two confused, which is the signal where the soul intended for a male body or the soul intended for a female body will go in by manipulating that.
That's one way that it can be come about.
The wrong body.
But that,
which is an initial indication of non-human souls being put into human bodies.
Well, what I observe, I'm going to catch you up on that. But what I observed after a year of intensive socialising, integrating with the gay community there, was at least 80% were childhood sexual abuse survivors or had traumas. And so whereas they were thinking it's part of who they are, and it was a choice, a free will choice, or even not necessarily just a choice, it was like, this is who I am. And what I was observing was it was a reaction to trauma, and then engineered that, oh yes, that's totally valid, you're gay, of course you are, welcome to our community, brave you for coming out, validate, rather than that person heal trauma or backtrack or anything. And I see it as well. I can see, it's called spiritual discernment, I can see spirits that have attached themselves to people that have been traumatised. So if an adult man has been male raped as a child, sometimes there's left behind a homosexual spirit, which
attaches often to the left side of the shoulder.
Interesting.
Through the back left shoulder.
Yeah, so I can see that, and it takes a while. So I'm thinking, is that person inherently gay, or have they got an attachment on them which was put upon them from trauma?
That's a possible programmed esoteric device.
Okay, so that, what do you mean?
Manufactured electronically or...
Well, this is where we think...
Electronically.
They've refined it. They used to do it very brutally with animal experimentation first, and then crossing over. I thought I'd turned that off. Sorry, excuse me. Hello, quickly, because I thought I'd put this on silent. I'll cut them off. Sorry, I'll put that on silent. I'm so sorry. Right. I'm going to nail the thing about DNA and hybrids and aliens and so on.
Well, non-human... The insertion of non-humans into human bodies, this is what some of the experiments the Germans may be involved with, the use of grey souls into human bodies as a hive mind programmer for use in the community as basically gang stalking.
I found an organisation in Bath that brings together all the scientists that would be able to do that, genetic medical engineers. It was based in Coombe Down, where the bases were.
Coombe Down is on my list.
MD Fox Hill, Carsham, Rutland, it's all around Coombe Down. And there was the Bath Institute of Medical Engineering, which attracted top high-class geneticists who was corresponding with one of Crick's DNA founder, Crick's colleagues, Nobel Prize winner on genetic research. He was the vice chairman, and the chairman was a member of the Pinay Circle, Lord Platt, chairman of the Eugenicist Society. This is an organisation based in Bath, in Coombe Down, which seems to be... Now, you also had a variety of interesting people that were connected.
I've got a theory about this, and I made a DVD, I think it's had about nearly 3,000 hits on it, about Alan Carr, Chatty Man. It was very pervasive in the BBC, which is you traumatise a boy as a child, and then you try and normalise the trauma so that they think it's part of who they are, it's harmless. This is the thing where they're trying to say that paedophilia is a loving thing, and you're not hurting the child, you're loving them, and they enjoyed it, and so on. Like, normalise it. It's normalising the abnormal. Right. By programming. So my observations after the year intensively and 3 years at Warwick was, okay, so I'm confused about this homosexual thing because I'm being told it's, you know, part genetic and part, is it nature nurture, which was a huge fascination with all these scientists, the nature nurture argument. But what I observed was a huge amount of them, this is unresolved trauma and then manipulated identifying. And I saw the same thing. Alan Carr was interviewing, I love him, I think he's hilarious, right? But he was interviewing some people and it came up something about, oh, I could go to jail for that. And then he said, oh yeah, don't want to be in jail being gang raped. And then he got aroused, and he actually got physically aroused. He sweated and like so on. And I was shocked that he could experience arousal at the thought of gang rape in prison, because I some of the work I've done is with teenagers, and being raped in prison is a
so
torture.
If they traumatise a child by if
you traumatise it and then reframe the trauma as seductive
by raping
and exciting,
him, and then you tell him it's okay, he's gay, it makes it all okay. Then
also,
it's okay.
And how do you embed when you recondition somebody to identify themselves, which in a way that normalises the trauma? First of all, if a child's been traumatised and they don't know how to access an explanation or a context for it, the next best thing is to find your own tribe. So you'll see, child sexual abuse survivors regrouping. You'll see people deciding they're gay and then regrouping. So they'll find a tribe so that they can recreate relationship and herd and
be accepted.
Validation, right? And so that's that. And the way they embed, when they manipulate it to say, like, okay, homosexuality is normal, and then they've tried unsuccessfully thus far to say paedophilia is normal, but the way they embed it is with pornography. That's engineered to validate and reinforce. They're trying to switch a paradigm and change society. They're trying to mess with society. Right, we're not going to go for husband, wife, 2.4 children, supportive extended family. We're going to mess with that. Right, so now how can we reprogram the masses? Because when they experimented on the likes of us, that was only a microcosm. They're interested in how do we extend the mind control to making it a macrocosm.
And that was the Tavistock agenda.
Right, so that was before the crazy stuff they were doing.
And these guys funneled the funding to it.
The transition of animal
experiment. The funding came from. For it, you can trace it.
The transition of animal experimentation onto doing the same on humans was fueled by the excitement over what Hitler's scientists had discovered in their hotbed war, Holocaust experimentation stuff, right? So they're very excited about that. Then they were propelled into a race, a reckless race, thinking the Russians were going to get there first. Right? Oh,
so that's a good cover story anyway.
So that's when they got reckless.
Transgenics.
They brought. When did they bring in Pavlov?
Pavlov was like early 1900s.
Right, so because he was a zoologist, and when he was recruited, he said, it's not my field, I'm a zoologist, I research on animals.
And they were like, bingo, yeah, animal research all carried out on humans.
They knew about how they exposing light to DNA, you can transfer that to other species.
Yeah. The fascination, right, just to include and not to negate the thing about non-humans or interdimensional beings and hybrids and DNA and so on. It doesn't matter how you frame it, but Satan, Lucifer, whatever you want to call him, and his cohorts, their driving agenda was to mess with human DNA, because God said, I'm creating man in my own image, and he's going to be a little above the angels. And Lucifer was disgusted with the knowledge that they already had. They had centuries ago knowledge about computers, about airplanes, about astrology, they had all this technology that they've been trading and selling to the Illuminati in exchange for their souls. They had it all, and so they knew they had this amazing, limitless, you know, in and out of time scales, you know, not limited by what we think is a time frame or a planet or a colony or an age or an era. They knew that, and they were so outraged when God said, I'm creating man and woman in my image, but they will rank a little higher than you. So in the rebellion of a third of, like Lucifer and a third of the angels, which, you know, all had different agendas, different abilities, different levels of malevolence, and so on, and are identified as greys and reptilians and so on. Yeah, extra-dimensional beings. Their driving agenda is to corrupt human DNA.
Well, thus the goat-headed creature in so-called Satanic, this being, which is a mix of...
it explains a lot of the fascination with wanting bestiality and wanting to combine... And that, like these experiments of trying to mix humans with animals and, you know, cloning, and it's in... Because... I kind of believe it. I do believe it. But that's the driving agenda with that. Like, if you take it down a bit, we're saying about the agenda is population control and mind control and beat the Russians. But in the larger scale, the agenda is bloodlines and DNA.
Forget secret space program. What about secret mind control program, secret science program?
Well, the thing about to localize it a bit more, to ground it or anchor it, the thing about Germany, where they got carte blanche funding, facilities, scientists dispersed, committees in place, agendas identified, experiment on this, experiment on that, examine this, examine that, do what you want, we'll cover it. So Germany was an outpost. So my mother had her second baby there.
Sorry,
and
before you go on to your mother, you keep referring to outpost. An outpost is something peripheral to somewhere else. Where's the somewhere else? Where's the main base? Where's the main?
Oh, okay. Well, depends if you look at... See, because mind control technically starts, am I right, around 1800? Like, that it's documented?
Well, it's part of the religious control.
Well, actually, it starts way before that, because with the Roman Empire manipulating Christianity.
The horse whisperers, the animal breeders, they were already being utilised, because Fritz Springmeier identifies the tailors of Bacup that were horse whisperers, bone knitters, healers. They were actually a trauma network. So then we're talking about militarisation of the trauma network, really, because it's already there. Yeah, and the flood, the Noah's Ark and all that, it was not because they were just sinning. It was because the DNA was so corrupt with the Nephilim. Like, the Nephilim had very soon started mating with mankind to corrupt the DNA and create giants. That's all documented. It was manipulated.
They have created specific races here which consider themselves to be above the rest, and which
there's definitely
destroy the rest of us.
See, the hierarchy is a demonic structure. It is a demonic structure. Humans were created equal, right? The only authority is the triune God. But mankind develops hierarchies. The elite, the Illuminati, government. And competition and hierarchy are demonic structures to reinforce them. So, let me just keep my chain of thought here. Anyway, I'm trying to go from Germany forward. So, what did you stop me to ask me before I went on that Germany? Outpost. Okay. Okay. All right. So in more recent, so you've got that you can trace it back actually to 70 AD. Actually, you can trace it back right to the beginning of the church, which is why I wanted to refer that as well to feminism. Okay. Mankind has been out of kilter and off right from the formation of the church, because the first thing that happened after Jesus ascended was there was a coup. And the coup was, and this is what the Illuminati based on, but they interpret it in a sexual and bloodline way, and they go off on that line. But the coup was Mary Magdalene was the most trusted confidant, the most, she was Jesus' most trusted confidant. He revealed secrets to her that he hadn't shared with the rest, and trusted her to...
Isn't this one of the original heresies?
Well, because it was a coup, right? It was a coup. First of all, she wasn't a prostitute. That's a different Mary. Mary Magdalene, the only documented thing was she had 7 demons. She was demon-possessed. So the ministry she received was to be delivered of the demons, which is what I was talking to you, is going to be a ministry that's very, very needed for everybody that wants to be released from being hosts. So anybody that's been, you're totally, absolutely right about people being occupied by alien entities using their body as a host body. In my terminology, you'd call that being demon-possessed.
It's the only way that anything in this 3D space that we consider ourselves to be in a reality of, that's the only way they can access physically to this world, is to occupy.
Absolutely, that's accurate. They need a human body.
Therefore, this 3D space we currently exist in is under threat of being terminated.
Well, it is due to be
collapse.
Recreated. I don't say terminated. It's going to be regenerated. But that's an aside. But absolutely, the same way, right.
Would you say they were the fallen angels that would be doing the occupying?
Oh yeah, that's what aliens are. Aliens are different ranks and different breeds of fallen angels. They are
also known as psychopaths. Or narcissists.
I don't know if every psychopath is demon-possessed. Probably. You can see it when you see pictures of people.
Isn't it allowing that force through?
When you see serial killers and stuff like that, there is the eyes that...
It's like, I don't mean to that extent, but just shut off from emotions and that interface, that real interface communication with other human beings.
Mind control can do mind control, trauma-based mind control, and then if you introduce electronic torture as well, that will create a narcissist, certainly a psychopath, possibly. It's all tied up with evil.
It's all tied up with the military, people coming back from the war and the trauma.
It's all right.
They wanted to make the soldiers kill. That was the big issue. They were having such a problem with them not killing.
They were showing too much empathy.
They had a campaign in the newspaper that girls gave the boyfriends a white feather if they wouldn't go to war. They were trying to foster this psychopathic personality because that's what is needed to do the killing.
You do know the habit with hunting, even to this day, because my sister was secretary of the hunt for more than a decade here, and it's called blooding. And your first hunt where a fox is killed, it's considered an honour. They chop the fox's tail off and they rub the blood on your face. And that's like an initiation into hunting, and that's still practised. And it's so it's all that. The point, to put it in a spiritual context, we're going a bit metaphysical now, but when Jesus ascended, and they were saying, "Don't go, we can't cope without you. What we're going to do," and he said, "No, because the Holy Spirit is going to multiply who I am, because it's going to be internalized, and so you will have access to miracles, wisdom, knowledge, discernment, healing, you'll have all those gifts, but I'm just one person, so I can only impact, in my human form, I can only impact Judea, Samaria, Galilee, but I'm being replaced by the Holy Spirit, where it's omnipresent, manifesting that side of God, omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent. So it's part
of this is a Christio type Romanesque church.
Okay, I was just gonna clarify the thing about the coup. So the reason why the church is completely built on a crooked cornerstone, and why there's been so much corruption and satanic and darkness agendas running in the church, because it was built on Mary Magdalene. If you want to say Pope, she was the intended leader of the church.
The removal of the feminine.
Yes, absolutely.
And the subjugation of men and women.
So everything was manipulated right from the get-go. they dropped out the book of they dropped out all the Gospels that highlighted the importance. And she, whether this was the right or wrong thing to do, she didn't. She just let it happen. Let them do it. It's
so
like,
this breaking
what
of the
a shame.
mother-child bond,
So
it goes back to that.
It's put mankind out of complete sync. It's made the church totally set up to fail, because women are weaker and we're different. I mean, physically weaker most of the time. I know women that have tried to strain after that equality thing in physical ways. And the fact is, scientifically, we're bred to, first of all, we breed, so therefore a man's got to be protected, provider, hunter-gatherer, at least for the period of giving birth and breastfeeding, whatever. So we have that vulnerable built into our biology, right?
It's not a vulnerability, it's a function.
Well, with dependence, you are necessarily dependent if you are pregnant and then lactating.
That's if you only have one mate and one male. But if you have a community of women in a village, then the community of the village women in like with animal welfare, you have the dominant male will only be allowed to fertilise the women to provide the primary stock in that community.
Well,
so in that aspect, that
they could have they see the
only this one man, one woman, and that's it.
Yeah, I don't know when it transitioned from polygamy to monogamy. Or
in the animal kingdom, it's the king rival male, which protects the tribe and provides those best genes, because all other rival males aren't allowed to reproduce.
Hence the anthropology in MK Ultra, because that's why, if you'll notice, that one effect of colonisation is that all the original tribes are being decimated and wiped out. So that culture isn't even there as a guide.
The animals have feelings and emotions, and even, I don't know if I'd guess. Yeah, right. Yeah, they do. The only thing they don't have is, I don't think they have a conscience. I don't think they have an inherent right-wrong thing.
Unless you can talk to them. Only animal whisperers can really...
But, so I had a... Right, so I don't personally think she was Jesus' secret lover and had a baby, and that's the bloodline, and that one went to France. I don't know. That's just my personal instinct, is that they were incredibly intimate, and I don't think it was about sex and reproduction. But because she was deposed and everything buried and the Bible manipulated, take that out to fit in with the Roman Empire culture, like we'll adopt it, but we're going to adopt it and mess with it to fit our means and so on. So there's evil, and so a main driving agenda is DNA missing, and just as God said, right, I'm going up, you're going to get the Holy Spirit, which is invisible and intangible and internalized. So I'm the head, but you're my hands and feet. I can't continue the work without your participation. Equally, on the dark side, those with the agenda to steal, kill and destroy, which was Lucifer and all his entities, they need host bodies, either animal or human, to function in. Because they...
Also, in other cultures, the jinn was another community of beings here which weren't made of earth. They look down on us because we're made of physical earth or this 3D space. But they don't... This world we live in, we call 3D space-time, but they don't exist in that world. They live in the other dimensional realms, whatever you want to call them.
Yes.
So the DNA stuff, I'm not surprised by any of it. I don't undermine or disbelieve people with alien stories, sightings, although that's being manipulated as well, because some of it is just illusory. They've learned how to both attack, if they've got implants in you, they've learned to change your perception of things so that you absolutely see something, but it's not there. They're refining holographic illusion.
And the secret space program does exist.
They're trying...
It's a particular technique producing a 3D illusion, but there are other mechanisms.
There's huge technology advances where they're going to try and stage the return of Jesus. They're going to try and imitate the thing they do.
Some people call it blue beam.
Yeah.
It's a direct instruction into the brain to see something, but
they can either mess with how you perceive something, or they can project something. Even they did it just recently for Christmas. NASA for a treat created in the sky, Santa and the reindeer, and you could see it everywhere. They told you the times to look in the sky and see Santa Claus with his reindeer. Go, no, like, it's peanuts, and they're well ahead of that.
Prince Charles and other dignitaries are able to appear at board meetings. They've had whole rock concerts where the artists are dancing around on stage.
They have, yeah.
And it's all a projection, it's not holographic.
Yeah, so
People
really,
died.
really, the technology is so advanced that the wisest thing you can say is, unless I have an intuitive confirmation of something, I don't believe or disbelieve, because they really have developed the technology so highly to delude us that...
But this is the whole point, that they've now been recovering ancient data that we have already done before, and to enable them to use this very high technology too early in our reality.
Yeah, because all of this information was there from the beginning of time. But it's just, we have to, well, I don't believe in reincarnation or coming back in an animal. I don't go down that route. Anyway, I don't want to get too metaphysical, because I want to keep it grounded as to what my testimony is, rather than just what the universal theories are.
We're in the last 20 minutes of R3.
Right, so I want to get grounded again on that. So, with regard to Germany, with regard to, I think there was huge stuff going on about reproductive interference. My mum gave birth to Fiona in 1956. She was handed the baby, and then they took the baby away to do whatever they do, clean it up, give it a heel prick, I don't know what at that time. When they brought the baby back, my mother, it broke the bonding. She said, "It's not my baby. You've brought me back a different baby. The baby I gave you, it's not the same baby." So there were various theories put forward to explain her instant mother-child bond break. There'd been some traumatic
She swore it was a
interference.
different baby.
She swore that it was not the same baby. They'd brought her back the wrong baby. She said the baby she gave them had black hair. They brought her back a brown-haired baby. They said, no, it's because it was wet, it looked black, but now we've dried the baby off, cleaned the baby up, it's just brown. And then they said it was postnatal depression, but you don't get that immediately after birth. It's when your 3-day hormone
3 days
is when any
kicks
postnatal
in.
depression sets in. There weren't blood tests done, and with hindsight, it looked like it must have been just mum flipping out, because that baby grown up, strongly resembles cousins on my dad's side of the family.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it was the beginning of a very successful rejection of offspring experiment. So mum was traumatised then, and then I was born 11 months later, and mum felt she'd been conned because she was told that something was a surefire contraception, and she ended up falling pregnant 2 months. Fiona was only 2 months old, and she fell pregnant again with me. I think she was told breastfeeding acts as a contraception anyway, so she fell pregnant with me. And then when she had me, then there was more where Dad would do the night feeds with a bottle for Fiona because she was breastfeeding me. But then instead of feeding Fiona the bottle, he'd drink it and then put her back to bed and tell Mum, I've given her her bottle, I've changed her nappy, I've burped her, she's fine, leave her cry. So Fiona would be crying, starving, and Mum would, the feeling of hatred towards her and rejection, and she's torturing me, was further embedded. And then so that's where I contacted, in researching the military bases, since we connected about Rudloe Manor, I went back to RAF Vegberg and I joined a couple of support groups, like there's a Facebook group, I was born in RAF Vegberg, and another one, a group for Rudloe Manor. And I noticed somebody saying about cot deaths and infant mortality rates, and so there was just little bits about at RAF Vegberg that there was a period of time where there was very high infant mortality.
Sorry, did you say you were born at RAF?
Yeah, and my sister was. My sister, there was the trauma. With my eldest sister, there was the attempt at separation at 3 months. With my second eldest sister, there was something happened when she was born, and there's possibilities that are very dark, which have appeared in. Is it James Casbolt talked about birth trauma? Anyway, so they were trying to see at what point is it in utero. At what point can you interrupt the bonding most successfully? And then, so I have babyhood memory of lack of oxygen, and then the next one is extreme. I had the thing about, did a cat jump on me in a pram? Yeah, the next memory was extreme, excruciating cold.
Yeah.
This could have been after you were born.
We discussed this in the first hour, but
we didn't discuss the cold thing.
Right. Okay.
James Casbolt talked about an experiment done where babies were put naked or nappies on in aircraft hangars on particularly windy nights.
Similar to what the Spartans do with their youth, young.
If they take the baby away, put it on a cold surface, and you can't breathe.
I think there are two separate incidents. There's evidence of one of the testings is being near drowning.
Yeah, it's near the Spartan thing that they would do with to sort the weed out with the child.
This is also where they can find the exact window for programming, because it's terror. It's called horrification. So it's where you go to the edge without losing them. This is why they probably lost a lot of them.
Yeah.
In finding out where's that exact point that you won't kill them, but you have exerted horrification to maximum. Yeah, so it's like finding the biting point on a clutch, basically. You can go this far, oops, no, lost it, right, next time just go almost that far. So the cold thing, that frozen memory, when James Casbolt said about there was an experiment where you put babies in a hangar on a particularly windy night, expose them to the elements, hypothermia, body temperature drops, what point do they embrace abandonment without dying?
That's right.
And I just knew that was where that memory of the memory was of excruciating cold and confusion at not having that need met, because all babies need is food, warmth and shelter, and physical contact. And so to me that's a very profound, and I absolutely know when James Casbolt said that, I was like, that's that memory sorted. So the alienation.
So he spoke to people that were in the programs, everyone.
So when we came back from Germany, there was no married quarters, and it wasn't decided where to send Dad next. So Mum was supposed to go with us 3 babies to an RAF hostel, I think in Bournemouth, where they put them until they got their married quarters, their billets, whatever you call them. And Dad said, no, you're not going there, you're going back to Ireland to my family. And so she went back to Ireland with 3 babies and started to be abused by his father daily, assaulted and traumatised. And us in the room, us 3 babies, Mum was given 1 room at his parents' in a 2-bedroom cottage, damp, 1 room with 3 babies and being assaulted daily, and so and nightly, and so as babies we were, I don't know. So the next traumatic memory is being hunted, and I know I've always known, and it's documented in a DVD I made 3 years ago, that I was hunted in a forest, and hunting is very much part of MK Ultra, and it's very much the fascination, like that there's not much difference between humans and animals, and very much part of that Illuminati elite aristocracy thing of, hunting species to death, hunting, shooting, fishing, that whole thing that Diana rejected and that the royal family is so into, and the Belgian, all the royals, monarchs internationally, and even Dubai, the hunting thing.
What's the significance?
They're very pivotal in the paedophilic ritual child abuse stuff and the hunting of children as if they were foxes. And so the 2 hunting memories I have there's other indications along the way, but I'll just keep it brief for time. But I have a very clear hunting memory where I'm racing through a forest, and I believe this was Rodlow Manor. And so there were the Hawthorne, there were the housing estate, and then there was a playground, and then there was a forest, and then there was the officers' housing, as far as I remember. And it was allowed to be sectioned off because obviously camps were secure bases, so you couldn't have civilians coming on without ID. And Kathy had talked about she got pocket money to get the bus home from school in Bath, and she spent her pocket money and walked home. Was it 2 miles or 4?
I did that a lot. 4, yeah.
4,
well,
and so that would bring you to the outskirts of the forest on Rodlow Manor Air Base, wouldn't it? Was that?
No, we used to live near the forest that went up at the bottom of Salisbury Hill, which Rodlow Manor was kind of behind there.
So was that the same forest we were sharing? So it was quite an extensive forest then?
Yes, and a local was standing at the end of and it was just going dusk, and he said, don't go in there after dark because bad things happen in there. Strange things happen in there.
Yeah, it was. I believe it was a. What would they call it? You know, on Salisbury they do exercises. They have a word. They have a term for it where you do.
Salisbury Plains military training area.
But this is Salisbury Hill behind Bath. SOLS.
Yeah, she's not. You're not. Yeah, no.
Yeah.
But I was just trying to get a term.
Peter Gabriel did that song, Salisbury Hill.
Yes.
That was about that.
Anyway, the term doesn't matter. But I believe that the forest was earmarked and privatised and guarded for horrification, abuse rituals and hunting of children. Children were hunted. I don't know how many, but
Salisbury Hill is better referred to Silbury Hill.
It was a similar structure. It's been wiped away to make a 6-lane motorway now, and there's a huge protest about it, but we still did it. Thereby maybe digging up a few of the connecting tunnels under there, because it's riddled with tunnels. That's where the Burlington bunker is, under there. Levels upon levels, 60 miles of underground railway, electronic trucks. And
I believe the tunnels in Gibraltar have been used. They're not shut down at all. I know regularly that the military were using the tunnels in Gibraltar. There's an amazing tunnel system, roads and everything. There were areas where they had to be able to carry on things like hunting children, or mass rape of children, or trying to...
See, the basic logic to this is that no species would do that to their own, so there must be a non-human species conducting these hunts, ultimately.
Well, certainly demon-possessed, yes, I'm perfectly willing to go along with demon-possessed or demon... Yeah.
In this book, they talk about lesser breeds. Lord
no, I wouldn't use alien, because to me it's...
lesser breeds, it's social strata. Lesser breeds are... they see themselves as different species.
No, yeah, they were trying to take out the conscience in humans. Animals can be highly intelligent, highly developed. The animals' things of survival of the fittest, they wanted to introduce that in humans. They wanted natural wastage.
And the so-called super soldier program.
Well, that's more on the mental manipulation thing, but they used animals, and specifically dogs, in what they called the horrification, which speeds up dissociation.
Werewolves?
Possibly, but they used dogs. They used dogs, and I think horses as well. And like it all comes from Pavlov being brought in as originally a scientist, zoologist that experimented on animals. He was told it's okay to cross over. We'll supply children that you can use the same principles on. And my father was this dog and horse whisperer, wise, ancient wisdom. He could train dogs like he was the envy of the nation. And so when we came back from Gibraltar, we came back from Germany. Yeah, we came back from Germany, and there was confusion about where to post him next. Or was that back from Gibraltar? Anyway, there was this very, very senior military guy visiting my father regularly. And supposedly because Dad was so good with dogs and Dad had such amazing psychology in training dogs to such high levels of obedience. And so the cover story was that because, you know, he was sought after by the gentry because he was always had gentry around him. And the cover story was it's because he was so good with dogs and horses. And so I have I have two hunting memories. One is running through a forest, being hunted, having a absolute terror, but a will to survive and escape, and you know, and finally falling over a branch. I can remember it, falling and then being surrounded by men, some in uniform, some not.
And this is a real memory.
Yes, this is a real memory, and I documented this 3 years ago when I was working, and I just thought, can't be real. There's no context in which that's real. I can't explain that. Therefore, short of truth serum or memory drugs, hypnosis, that's never going to make sense. So let's just shelve it. It's always been there, and I had recurring nightmares about it for a year. I was being hunted. I finally fell. Men stood around me. And as I interpreted it, urinated on me, which was like a final humiliation submission thing. With hindsight, was it urinating or ejaculating? I don't know. And then I go blank, at which point I would suspect I was drugged, raped, and then drugged for memory wipe. And I don't know why. It obviously didn't work, the level of drugging and memory wiping the trauma, because I kept having that night. I had that scene replay for a year.
What age were you?
In nightmares. I estimate 8.
Oh, right, okay.
Which puts me at Rudloe Manor. And when I consulted with the psychiatrist from the Maudsley... Right, so when I consulted with the psychiatrist from the Maudsley, I said, could that be flashback trauma of my granddad molesting my mum when I was a baby, and am I just remembering something else and transposing it into a forest? And he said, no, the likelihood is there was a trauma around that time for you to have had a year of nightmares and what have you. And the other memory is being chased and dogs biting my ankles, actually, the not just the feeling of terror. And it was almost like, these are my instructions, you've to run to the river and back. And then the dog's chasing, and then they were biting at my ankles, and the thought process that this is beyond, I with the best will in the world and with the most fear of a hiding for being disobedient, I can't survive this. And then that goes blank. And I tried to place that at a RAF camp, because my sister reminded me that one of our RAF camps backed onto a field and there was a disused farm yard there where Dad used to breed dogs and bring the kids to help him feed the puppies and do whatever. And there was a long field down to a river. So I tried to make it make sense in order to make it acceptable, you know, that you can carry on living. When you've got these kind of horror memories, you have to frame them in a way that you can keep living and ignore them. So I thought, right, Dad was obviously telling me to exercise the pups, run to the river and back, and so that must be why I was exhausted and out of breath, and they were biting my ankles, and so that made it less sinister. But that's just layering of me trying to rationalise why would somebody put me in that position.
Okay, well, we'll have to take a break.
Sure. Yes. Are you right? Okay.
And I'd like to come back and read the book. Yeah.
Do we have time for me to just say about this survivor? Right, so I made contact with somebody. So I went on the RAF, I was born at RAF Vegberg. I said, my mum thought the babies got mixed up at birth, never done DNA testing. Anybody have any clues as to how we can get our medical records? Then I looked further down the page.
We'll have to do this.
All right. Okay. And I haven't even talked about the missions I was sent on with aristocracy and gentry No, I have made notes.